before, we spoke about the different types of food or nutriment. We look at food, for instance, rice or boiled rice. There's different levels of refinement of physical food, coarse and subtle. And there's one sutta that compares the different types of food or nutriment. So we can start by looking at elephants eating bananas and different kinds of vegetation, which is very coarse food. And cows eating grass, it's a bit more refined. And as you go through different kinds of animals, up to humans, the food gets more and more refined. For instance, the people living in a village or farming, and people in a city eating more refined food than that, more expensive or rare food that's more refined, up until a human king eating very refined food. And then even more refined than that would be the food of the earth devas, the heavenly beings, and all through the different levels of heavenly beings, of devas, from the earth devas to the realm of the four great kings, to the realm of the 33, up to the Yama, Tushita devas, and so on. So their food gets more refined according to the level. So this is about physical food, or the different types of food. So there's one sutta, the Putta Mansa Sutta, the sutta on the sun's flesh. So Mansa meaning flesh, and Putta meaning sun. And in the sutta, the Buddha taught about the 4 kinds of nutriment that sustain all different types of beings. The beings having been born rely on nutriment, and beings that are seeking birth as well. So whether coarse or subtle, all beings rely on these nutriments. And so these 4 nutriments, or 4 foods: physical food, coarse and refined; sense contact, mental intention, and consciousness. So these are the sustenance for beings to live. So when we talk about the first kind of nutriment, well, how do we contemplate physical food? And the Buddha taught, see here, bhikkhus. And the word bhikkhu here means the one who sees the drawbacks in the cycle of birth and death. That's the bhikkhu. And bhikkhus need to eat, whether coarse or subtle, or coarse or refined food, in order to live. So how do we contemplate food in order to not be attached to it, in order to not get stuck to it? So people eat different kinds of flesh, like fish and so on, that the Buddha permitted for bhikkhus to eat. But then certain types of flesh, like elephant or bear or dog or human or tiger, these are not allowed for bhikkhus to eat. There's 10 different types of animals that bhikkhus are not allowed to eat, but other types of animal flesh are allowable. And so we contemplate the food as different types of levels of refinement of food. But all food, it's natural elements. So we contemplate like this to not get attached to it. And the simile the Buddha gave is of a husband and wife crossing a desert with their lovable and adorable baby son. They're crossing the desert to go to a town or city destination. And so as they're crossing the desert, the 3 of them run out of food, and they need to decide how to survive. And they realize if they don't kill and eat their beloved, lovable son, then they'll all die. And so they need this food to travel, and they know that if they don't eat their son, then they'll all die. But eating the flesh of their son is just torturous and suffering for them. So they kill the son, dry the flesh, and eat it for sustenance. And whenever they eat the flesh of the son, they cry out and beat their breast, saying, "Where did you go, our beloved son?" So in this example, they think that it's something they have to do, because otherwise all of them would die. But doing this is very torturous and suffering for them. And so this is what the Buddha taught the bhikkhus. And again, bhikkhus here meaning all practitioners. So we're all bhikkhus. So we eat food and we contemplate, why do we eat food? Why did the husband and wife in that simile eat the food? Well, they ate that food, the son, the flesh of the son, in order to cross the desert. They didn't eat it for fun or for pleasure or for getting fat or for beautifying themselves. They ate it to survive in order to cross the desert. In the same way, bhikkhus eat not to beautify themselves, not for fun or pleasure, not for fattening, because to eat in that way with that intention would be unwholesome kama. So even on the 5 precepts, that would be on a subtler level, one sees that one wants the end of suffering. One doesn't eat for pleasure, for beautification, or for fattening. And so we contemplate that food is something that we strive to abandon attachment to, abandon clinging to abandon the delight in it, in order so that the mind may exit this world or escape this world, not to get stuck or attached to this world. Then we can look at the nutriment of sense contact, whether through the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind. All these 6 senses, all the contact through the 6 senses that the mind has liking and attraction to. So this is compared to a cow with no skin, a flayed cow. If that cow leans against a wall, the animals in the wall will eat it up. If the cow leans on a tree, the animals in the tree will eat it up. If the cow goes in the water, the animals in the water will eat it up. If the cow stands in the air, then the animals in the air will eat it up. So the cow with no skin, wherever it goes, is suffering. Wherever it goes, the animals eat it. So we see, therefore, that the 3 types of Vedana, of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feeling, we have to be very careful with sense contact. The sense contact arises in these 3 types of feeling tone, eat our hearts, or eat our minds. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling, eat the heart. So we have mindfulness to not fall into liking or disliking. Then we take a look at the nutriment of mental intention. So this is compared to a pit of glowing hot embers with no flames, no smoke. If one were to fall into that pit, then one would die. And some strong people grab one and drag one towards that pit. So there's no escape. One's being dragged into it, and one can't escape from the grip of those people. And we see that no one wants to die, that everyone wants pleasure, doesn't want pain. But these people are grabbing one to throw into that pit of glowing embers. So we think in that scenario, the intention in the mind would be to want to be far away from that glowing hot pit of embers. If we're 5 meters away, then it's hot already. 4 meters away is even hotter. 3 meters away is very hot. So we have the intention not to fall into that pit, because if we fall in, we'll die for sure. So we see that this is the food or nutriment of mental intention. So we practice to know it clearly. The noble disciples know this clearly. It's the kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha, sensual craving, craving for becoming, craving to not become. So we practice so that these three types of craving don't arise in our mind. Because when they arise in the mind, it's like falling into a pit of glowing embers. So we see that craving is very fearful and scary like that. It takes us to be born and dying, born and dying, born and dying, experiencing suffering, torturous suffering. Then we take a look at the nutriment of consciousness. So this nutriment of consciousness is something very subtle. And so it's compared to a thief that's been captured and is getting punished by the king. And the king orders the thief to be stabbed with 500 spears in the morning. Then the king asks, is the thief dead yet? And the guards answer, he's not dead yet. And so the king orders another 500 spears in the middle of the day, and still not dead. And so another 500 in the evening. And this is compared to the nutriment of consciousness, because all these objects of consciousness, it's like they're stabbing the mind all the time. So in this way we see the drawbacks of consciousness, the nutriment of consciousness, in order to not suffer. So in this way we know materiality and mentality. We know that if we cling to it, it's suffering. So we see this form, feeling, perception, formations, consciousness, these 5 aggregates. We cling to them and thereby experience suffering all the time. So therefore we cultivate samadhi to separate the mind from the body. And when that happens, we feel very light. And we see that the body is filled with suffering. And we contemplate, well, what are the kinds of suffering that are experienced through the body? So we read about caring for the body in the suttas, that the arahants still have the suffering of the 5 khandhas, sitting for a long time, walking for a long time, speaking for a long time. It can be torturous or painful. It has dukkha, there's pain. There's the dukkha of heat or cold. The body just can't handle these things. It's too much for the body to take. There's hunger. And so the body has suffering all the time, the suffering of the aggregates. And the teeth, if they degrade or have an issue, this can be very torturous as well. If the teeth have some kind of problem, then the nerves are telling us about the degradation. And so we see that the body is dukkha, it's torturous, it's suffering. So we contemplate to see dukkha clearly. And we contemplate to seek out this quality of dukkha, to find it, to see what types of dukkha are experienced in the body. And we contemplate craving, sensual craving that the mind gets lost in, craving to become, craving to not become, that the mind gets lost in. Also to contemplate materiality and mentality the mind get lost in, that are stabbing the mind all the time. And this is something one is able to do through cultivating mindfulness. Wherever you are, then cultivate mindfulness a lot. Cultivate samadhi to be firmly established, this peace and collectedness of mind, in order so that the mind can have wisdom to know clearly the Dhamma that should be known. And this is something that everyone can do. Venerable Ajahn Chah compared it to digging a well for water. If you keep digging without giving up, then you will find water. You must meet with water. So we have faith, we have effort, perseverance without ceasing. And even if one has doubts, then one can still progress, one can still go on the path. And Venerable Ajahn Chah gave this teaching, and it really resonated with my heart. It was very appropriate for my mind, because I had a great deal of doubt. I really doubted a lot. I looked at my friends, and they looked very still and peaceful, and they looked like they were at ease. And I looked at my own mind, it looked very agitated and troubled, so much suffering, because I wanted the fast way. I wanted to realize the Dhamma quickly, and I was filled with doubts. These doubts made the heart suffer a great deal, feel very agitated. So may you be careful about doubt. May you bring the mind to peace and stillness and samadhi. And that's the point at which wisdom will arise. It's not difficult to do. Have effort, have perseverance, have a lot of mindfulness, and in the end you'll be able to know and see the Dhamma. In the beginning we study, we listen, we learn the teachings of the great masters, and then we take those teachings and put them into practice. We meditate, we cultivate mindfulness, and practicing like this, the mind can go quickly. We listen to the Dhamma, and this is a meditation method of Dhamma practitioners that can bring the mind to develop quickly. As we listen to Dhamma, doubts are dispelled. The mind is lifted up, brought to higher levels. The hindrances are reduced, and we can feel very close to Nibbana. The mind feels bright and radiant. It's like clear water, and in the end, rapture can arise. Samadhi, this peace and collectedness is firm. Something truly amazing happens, a miracle arises. Then in whatever posture, sitting, standing, walking or lying down, the mind feels still and empty and peaceful. This is possible through samadhi. Before one would have samadhi perhaps just while sitting, but then one can have samadhi while speaking or working or doing anything. One can feel peaceful just like that. So this is a fruit of Dhamma practice arising, and it's a fruit that we know for ourselves. And this wisdom that arises is also something that we know for ourselves. It's something truly miraculous. So we make effort, we listen to Dhamma to give rise to knowing, to give rise to samadhi, to dispel doubt, to give rise to wisdom, to destroy the fetters of personality view, attachment to rites and rituals, and skeptical doubt. And then our contemplation of the body will improve as well. We see the body as just a bag of unclean, unattractive things, like a bag of blood, a bag of bones, a bag of pus and lymph, a bag of flesh, and so on. So we see the body as not beautiful, and we develop the peace and collectedness of mind, develop the mindfulness and wisdom to make the peace and collectedness deep. And in this way, the mind is filled with rapture and happiness. The mind's peaceful, collected, joyful, still, and empty. And the mind develops even higher. So however high or however well established the samadhi is, that's how much the wisdom will be. So we take a look at the body, at feeling tone, at the proliferations of mind. We see wherever the mind clings, that's where it's born, right there. So we practice to understand that, and in the end, the mind is able to let go. We see everything that arises is Dhamma, that all is Dhamma. It's all not self, not me, not mine, not you or yours, not a self. The Dhamma is just the Dhamma. The body is just the body. Feelings are just feelings. The mind is the mind. In this way, the mind doesn't cling to anything. And this is the highest wisdom. And reaching that highest goal, it all starts with what you're doing right now. Whether you progress quickly or slowly, it's up to your past accumulated spiritual virtues. So may you all be well, and may you all grow in blessings.